My name is Quiros, fourth year at Avila.
My name is Ahmed Alzahrani.
I'm Monika McCoy.
And I'm Hendrix, and today we'll be teaching you guys about market analysis for teachers.
Today we are going to talk about how to do a market analysis. A market analysis is kind of a analysis that you make to decide whether a certain job market is going to be profitable for you to enter. And so you want to look at the opportunities involved with that, the costs, the benefits, and kind of analyze the supply and demand in the market to see if that's a job field that you want to enter into. And so to do that, the first thing you want to do, you can see on our outline there on Roman numeral 1, is to define the job. And luckily for you, I have already defined the job that we'll be talking about today. We're going to be talking about going into the field of education because teaching is way exciting and I know everybody wants to do it. So we are going to proceed with that definition of a job, teaching. Okay, and so then we can go to Roman numeral 2, where we're going to determine the supply for the profession. And to do that, you've got to figure out who does it. You say, I want to do a thing. Who does this thing? And that is when I will turn to you guys for an awesome answer of who does the teaching?
Teachers?
Right. I love the way that you think. Okay, what kind of education and experience do you think teachers would need?
I think they probably need a bachelor's degree along with some experience in the field.
That's right, they do need a bachelor's degree, and within that, while you are getting that degree, you also go through a field experience that most of us has seen before when we see student teachers. Those are people who are still in college, who are typically in their last year or even last semester of attaining an education degree. Okay? So we have determined the supply, we have determined that teachers do this job and that they will need to go to college for at least 4 years, and that's how they will be able to enter the field. So we got to talk about the field itself, and that's when we're going to start determining the demand. Okay, so when we're thinking about teaching and teachers, we got to figure out the demand, and we say, well, where is teaching done? Where do teachers go to do that thing that they do? And where do they go, class?
Elementary schools, middle schools, high schools.
Right. Is there another kind of school besides the one where most of us are probably familiar with at public school? What's the other?
Private schools.
Right. The other one is private schools. And so that is where teachers are going to be found. The other thing you need to talk about when you are determining demand is the frequency that teachers are hired at and any related trends. So when you're talking about that, you want to talk about which teachers are hired. You might say to yourself, is there a certain content area teacher who is more likely to be hired than another one? And the answer for that is maybe. Okay, first of all, there's always going to be a demand for teachers. And as technology is increased into our society, into our world, there is going to also be an increasing demand for people who can teach others and students how to use that technology. And so when you're looking at that, we're talking about STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And those are high demand fields right now because not a lot of people are already teaching them, and the amount to teach is a lot. So if you are good at those things, science and engineering and mathematics, you might consider going into an educational field where you could teach them. And you might experience that you have a higher frequency of being hired. You could also probably have an easier time finding a job in low income districts because less teachers are willing to work for a lower amount in lower income school districts. They tend to pay teachers less, and obviously that would be undesirable to some people. It's important to note that demand for teachers will rise another 12% through 2022. There are studies right now that are showing not only are teachers going to be replacing our older educators who were hired during the baby boom era of the post-60s, but because of an expanding population due to a current baby boom happening as well as a population swelling from immigration, that demand will rise by that 12%, as I said just a minute ago. Yes, sir.
Ms. McCoy, I have a question. A lot of people talk about teachers not getting paid very much, but I found that the average income for an elementary school teacher is about $53,000. Can you explain why that is, or why that number seems so high and we hear about it being low?
Well, a lot of people think that that number sounds high when they don't understand everything that figures into teaching. Because a lot of people would consider that you take 3 months off, you get weekends off, you get all holidays off, and typically the holiday break periods are not just that holiday like you would experience if you had a retail job, okay? So people don't understand that during those times off, we are grading, we are furthering our own education, and we are trying to study and find new trends in education that will extend our availability to teachers.
And don't teachers in places like California and then very populated cities like New York earn more, which would make this number seem higher to us?
That is true. The cost of living in those places is also higher, so it is still a relative amount. You will find that it costs more to live in New York or California than it does to live here in the Midwest. So those figures will be higher, but you also have to consider that those teachers are going to pay higher amounts of rent. They could face a higher utility charge for like their electricity use in their household. So while they are paid more on the coast, it also costs more to live on the coast. So it's actually pretty relative. The fourth thing we have to talk about when we are doing a market analysis is determining the elasticity of the market for a certain job, which for us again is teaching. So for that, we're going to review some definitions here. We said a few weeks ago that elasticity is the degree to which demand and supply are affected by changes in price or wages, which in this case would refer to income. Okay, if something is inelastic, we say that the supply and demand are mostly or relatively unaffected by changes in those price amounts. If something is elastic, then the supply and demand have largely been affected by that change. Okay, so when we look at this for education, this has some implications that we can analyze. When we look at teaching itself from the supply side, it's a highly specialized degree, and once you get that, there's not very much else you can do with it that's actually related to the field. When you get a degree in teaching, mine for instance is in middle school social studies. I am a middle school social studies teacher. I'm not a high school social studies teacher. I'm not a middle school math teacher. I just do this one thing. This is what I do. So that's very specialized. When you look at the demand side of things, there's always going to be a demand for teachers. And as the use of technology increases, it is very likely that the demand for teachers to teach the use of that technology will also increase. So for us, that inelastic market is actually positive because what it means for teachers is a relative amount of job security. We will typically always be able to find jobs as teachers, especially when you build into your degree specializations in teaching literacy or teaching mathematics or special minors that support your content area. So if you're a social studies major, you might get a psychology minor that will support your ability to get a job because you can teach two different things. So are there any questions that you guys have for me about the field of teaching, about how to do a market analysis, or any related questions?
Why did you originally want to get into teaching?
Okay. Well, when I was in first grade, I had a really great teacher who I really liked, and she really helped me learn how to read and how to spell. And I always liked that she helped me on those foundational skills, and I feel like that really made me able to achieve more later on in life, that somebody cared about my education when I was very young there in first grade. Yes?
How do you assess student learning? Like, I know that there's a lot of different learning styles. How do you as a teacher distinguish learning styles?
Okay, well, as far as assessment goes, there are state assessments that happen starting in third grade. Of course, most people in middle school and high school are very well aware of these, and by the time we get into college, we're extremely well aware of these. There are also things like formative assessments, which are very informal, and this can be something as little as sitting at the front of the classroom and kind of asking questions to figure out what students have learned and what they might need to learn a little bit more about. And then there's, of course, summative assessments, and examples of this are like your finals at the end of a semester, at the end of a school year. As far as figuring out learning styles, that sometimes can be the hardest part because that can refer to the ways that a student learns the best. So with that, there are personality profiles that you can fill out online that will give you an idea of what a student's characteristics are like. There are also different little questionnaires they can fill out about ways that they have learned before, and from those you can derive meaning as to what ways visual, kinesthetic, or auditory that they pick up information the best.
What goes into your decision on how the class will learn?
Well, it's a little bit of give and take. Some of it has to do with state standards. There are things that legislators think that students need to be learning from year to year, and then the other part of that is determined by what my students already know and how much I can help them learn within a given class time. So it kind of goes in between those two worlds. You know, I would definitely describe it as a Venn diagram of what they have in common as to what we can get done. But yeah.
In what way do you have a mentor relationship with the students?
Okay, well, with my students, I make sure that I am always available to listen, and that doesn't just mean problems that they have with the academic schoolwork. Sometimes, if a student comes in with a bad mood, it can be very successful if you ask them about what's going on. Maybe they got into an argument with a family member at home and they just need to kind of vent about that, and that will fix their day. And sometimes you have students that are more sensitive than others, and so they need that extra kind of emotional support, which kind of speaks to how teachers wear more than one hat, more than just the teacher. Yes.
Do you think the number of students in a class affects the comprehension of learning the material?
I don't know if it directly has an effect on it. I think it has an effect when you consider how many different ranges people already have learned. You will have, for instance, when you enter an economics course, you'll have people who have a very firm background in that, who know what they're getting ready to study, and they have a lot of prior knowledge, which is really important, that they'll be able to access in order to build on that structure of learning about economics. At the same time, you'll have people that enter that course who are not even sure what the word economics means, and so you'll have to build on a prior knowledge set of essentially zero to get them to understand fully what it is that you're talking about.
Does the technology affect teaching?
Teaching, I don't think that computers replace teachers, but I think when used to augment the classroom and definitely support what the teacher is doing, I think it'd be very powerful, especially with this generation who are very digitally geared and very visually geared to learn and take in information. So having that technology available to present things like graphs immediately without having to draw it out can be a very powerful instructional aid. So I think it's very important.
What made you want to get into teaching?
A lot of different reasons. If you have a passion in something, you can do that thing, and you can also, when you get tired of doing that thing later in life, teach other people how to do it so other people can be good at it too. It's really important to understand that education just doesn't affect the person who's educated, it affects the world around them as well, meaning that the more of us who are educated, the better off we all are.
Lastly, Ms. McCoy, you talked about teaching being inelastic. Can you touch on how how people may still hire me even though there may not be a lot of substitutes in that field after getting such a degree?
Well, other fields that you could go into with that degree if you were unable to find a job, if that's what you're speaking to, would be you could go into childcare. I know a few preschool teachers who have more advanced degrees than preschool teaching actually requires, but they enjoy that environment so much and they enjoy that range of children, that age range of children so much that that's worth it to them. The other thing you can go try to do is be an independent and private tutor, and this is where you will attempt to find a contract with a family, who wants their kids maybe homeschool or they need a supplement to a public or private education. It's probably going to be private school families that you will be tutoring for within that SES bracket.